problem is that I have no memory of meeting her at all. I need you to understand that before anything else. Not in the way people say they don't remember when they're hiding something. Not in the way trauma supposedly locks doors in your mind. I mean a clean, total absence. The kind of absence you feel when someone describes a place you've never been, a meal you've never tasted, a person you've never touched. There is no door. There is no room behind it. There is nothing to unlock. Her name was Maren Calloway. I know that now. I didn't know it when the detectives first sat across from me in my kitchen, watching my face the way people watch someone who's about to lie. Detective Harlow placed a photograph on my table. A woman in her early 30s. Dark auburn hair cut just above the shoulders, a small scar near her left eyebrow. She was smiling in the photograph, not at the camera, but at someone beside it. The kind of smile that's mid-sentence, caught between words. Do you recognize this woman? I studied the photograph the way I study everything. I worked as an archivist for the Brennan County Records Office. My entire profession is the careful organization of things other people have forgotten. I am not someone who loses details. I am the person other people call when details are lost. I told them the truth. No. Detective Liang, the younger one, glanced at her partner. Not with surprise, with something closer to confirmation. Mr. Ellison, she said, 7 people have independently identified you as the last person seen with Maren Calloway before her disappearance. 3 of them know you by name. The first witness was a barista named Teo at a cafe called Latchkey on the corner of Devereux and 9th. I go there most Saturday mornings. I order a pour-over, black, and I sit at the counter by the window where the light hits the page at the right angle for reading. Theo told the detectives I'd been coming in with a woman for weeks, maybe 2 months, always on Saturdays. We'd arrive together, order separately, and sit at the corner booth. He said we seemed comfortable with each other. Not new, not performative. The kind of ease that comes from knowing where someone keeps their keys, how they take their coffee, what they look like when they're thinking. I go to Latchkey every Saturday. I sit alone. I have always sat alone. But here's the part that lodged itself behind my ribs and hasn't moved since. When I told Theo this, when I went back to the cafe myself after the detectives left, and I said, I don't know who she is. I've never brought anyone here. He didn't argue. He didn't look confused. He looked frightened. And then he said something I think about every single day. Yeah, she told me you'd say that. I asked him what he meant. He wouldn't repeat it. He busied himself with the espresso machine and kept his back to me. And when I pressed him, he said he didn't want to get involved. He said it the way someone says it when they're already involved and wish they weren't. I stood in that cafe, in the exact spot where I apparently sat across from a woman whose face stirred nothing in me, and I felt the floor tilt. Not metaphorically. My inner ear went wrong. Something about standing in a place where your life supposedly happened without you. It does something mechanical to your balance. I went home and checked my calendar. Saturday, March 8th. The day Maren Calloway was last seen, according to the police report. My calendar said, Latchkey, 9:30. Nothing unusual. I go every Saturday. But underneath that entry, in my own handwriting, I keep a paper planner. I always have. There was a second line I did not remember writing. Bring the Neruda. I don't own any Neruda. I have never read Neruda. I checked my bookshelves anyway, moving systematically, the way I catalog county records. Shelf by shelf, spine by spine. On the 3rd shelf of the hallway bookcase, between a water-stained copy of The Master and Margarita and a field guide to North American moths, I found a slim paperback of Pablo Neruda's 20 love poems, The Song of Despair. Inside the front cover, in handwriting that was not mine, someone had written, For the version of you that remembers. Signed, M. That night, after finding the Neruda, I did what I should have done first. I tried to prove all of them wrong. I pulled out my planner, the one I've kept since my divorce 6 years ago, since Sandra moved to Eugene and I rebuilt my life into something small and precise and entirely accounted for. Every meal, every errand, every Saturday at Latchkey, every Wednesday call with my sister June, every Sunday call back. My life is not the kind that misplaces people. I don't drink. I don't black out. I catalog county records for a living. Gaps are what I'm trained to find. So I went through the planner page by page, October through March, looking for proof that my Saturdays were mine alone. Instead, I found the opposite. Small marks, not entries, more like corrections. My handwriting, but quicker than usual. A Saturday in November, Latchkey crossed out and rewritten as Latchkey Corner Booth. I always sit at the counter. A Saturday in January, 9:30 changed to 9:15. I always arrive at 9:30. A Saturday in February, 2 words added beneath the usual entry, so faintly I almost missed them. Her favorite. I don't know what that refers to. I don't know whose favorite. I sat at my kitchen table and stared at my own planner and realized I was looking at the edges of a life I didn't live. Not someone else's handwriting. Mine. Not someone else's schedule. Mine. Just adjusted. Nudged. As if someone had been gently steering my Saturdays toward a person I can't remember, one small edit at a time, which is what made the next discovery so much worse. 3 days after the detective's visit, I found a receipt in the pocket of my gray coat. The gray coat I wear every Saturday from October through April. Latchkey Cafe, March 8th. 2 pour-overs. I have never ordered 2 of anything. I sat on my bed with that receipt in my hand and tried to feel something that would make this make sense. Fear, guilt, recognition, anything. There was nothing. Just the paper between my fingers, the ink slightly smudged. Proof of a moment I did not experience. I turned the receipt over. On the back, in my handwriting, and I want to be clear, it was unmistakably my handwriting, down to the way I cross my 7s and leave my lowercase e's slightly open, there was an address. 1740 Alcott Street, Unit 4B. I'd never heard of Alcott Street. I should have given the receipt to the police. I should have called Detective Harlow and handed over evidence like a reasonable person in a reasonable situation. Instead, I drove to Alcott Street because some part of me understood that whatever was wrong with my memory, the answer wasn't in a police station. The answer was in the Gap itself. The building was a narrow 3-story walk-up with a green door that needed paint. The landlord, a heavy man named Gill who smelled like wood smoke and menthol, opened the front door before I'd finished climbing the steps. "You're back," he said. Not a question. She's not here. Police already went through everything." He looked at me with an expression I couldn't place at first. It took me a moment to recognize it as pity. "I'm sorry about whatever happened between you two, but I can't let you up." I asked him how many times I'd been there before. He shrugged. "Dozen times. More? You always came on weekday evenings, usually brought groceries." He paused. "You cooked for her. She mentioned that once. Said you made the soup with lemon and egg that she..." He stopped himself, maybe realizing he was describing someone's life to them, and that person had no idea what he was talking about. I stood on that sidewalk outside 1740 Alcott Street, and I want to tell you what I felt, but I don't have the right word for it. It wasn't fear. It wasn't confusion. It was something more like vertigo, the sense that you're standing still while the world has moved underneath you. Not metaphorical vertigo this time, real physical vertigo. My knees buckled. I sat on the curb. I had apparently been cooking dinner for a woman I couldn't remember in an apartment I'd never seen in a part of the city I'd never visited, and she had apparently expected me to forget. I called my sister that night. Wednesday, our usual day. I needed something to feel normal. June, I need to ask you something. Have I ever mentioned someone named Maren? The silence lasted 4 seconds. I counted. In our family, silence is not neutral. Silence is a weather system. Why are you asking me that? Because the police think I was the last person to see her before she disappeared, and I don't. I know. They called me too. Something in her voice had changed. Not the tone, the architecture. She was speaking from a different room inside herself. A careful room, a room with locks. What did you tell them? I asked. The truth. Which is? Another silence. 3 seconds this time. You talked about her constantly, David. For months. You were... I hadn't heard you sound like that since before Sandra. You told me she was a graduate student. You told me she was studying memory. You told me she had this laugh that made you feel like you were 16. Her voice cracked very slightly. You told me you were falling in love with her. I held the phone and listened to my sister describe a version of me I had never been. June, I swear to you, I don't... I know you don't remember. That's what scares me. I asked her what she meant by that. She said she didn't want to talk about it on the phone. She said we should meet in person. She said there were things she needed to show me. She never showed me. 3 days later, June stopped returning my calls. When I drove to her apartment, her neighbor said she'd gone to stay with a friend. The neighbor didn't know which friend. The neighbor said June had seemed upset when she left. Not sad, not angry, frightened. My sister, who has never been afraid of anything in her life, left her apartment because of something related to me. I went to the university. I needed to understand who Maren Calloway actually was. Her thesis advisor, Dr. Ayana Perrin, agreed to meet me in her office, a small room overgrown with books and the particular kind of organized chaos that only academics can navigate. She was a compact woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an economy of expression that made every word feel selected from a larger, more cautious vocabulary. She didn't explain Maren's research to me. She showed me. She unlocked her desk drawer and placed a notebook on the table between us. It was Maren's, a research journal, cloth-bound, dark green. She'd left it in Dr. Perrin's office 2 days before she disappeared. She asked me to keep it safe, Dr. Perrin said. She didn't say from whom. I opened it. The first 20 pages were what you'd expect. Citations, interview protocols, observations written in clean academic shorthand. Maren was studying people who lost entire relationships from their memory while retaining everything else. The term she used was selective unthreading. Someone could lose every trace of a person, every feeling, and rebuild their life around the absence without ever noticing the whole. But the back of the notebook was different. The handwriting changed. It became smaller, more urgent. These weren't research notes. They were dated entries, almost like a diary. November 3rd. He brought me soup again. I've golimono made from scratch. He's memorized my kitchen. He knows which burner runs hot. He knows where I keep the good salt. He has no idea that he's done this before. I watched his face while he cooked. There was no recognition, just instinct. December the 12th. He told me he loved me today. First time this cycle. I almost said it back. I can't do that again. I can't survive unraveling from someone twice. I looked up at Dr. Perrin. What does she mean, this cycle? Dr. Perrin removed her glasses and cleaned them, which gave her an excuse to look away from me. Maren told me she was in love with her primary case study, an anonymous subject. She never gave me his name. She was very protective of him. She paused. She said that every time she got close enough to matter, he forgot her. She let that sentence sit between us. And every time he forgot her, he found her again, as if for the first time, the same coffee shop, the same opening conversation, the same jokes. Dr. Perrin's voice had gone very quiet. She said it was like watching someone fall in love with you on a loop while you remembered every previous version. The word "every time" landed in my chest like a stone dropped into still water. How many times? She wouldn't tell me. She said it had happened before. Not once. Dr. Perrin leaned forward. "Mr. Ellison, Maren didn't disappear from you. I believe she disappeared because of you. Not because of anything you did, because of the pattern." I turned to the last entry in the notebook. It was dated March 7th, the day before she vanished. He's starting to look at me the way he does right before it happens. Something behind his eyes. Not him. Not quite. I've seen it 3 times now. I used to think it was neurological. I don't think that anymore. I don't know what I think. I just know I need to leave before he... The entry stopped mid-sentence. The rest of the page was blank. I went home and tore my apartment apart. Not in rage. In systematic archivist's precision. Every drawer, every shelf, every coat pocket, every book, every folder. I was looking for evidence of a life I couldn't remember, and I was terrified of what I'd find, and I found it anyway. In my desk drawer beneath a stack of old tax returns, I found a journal I didn't recognize. It was a simple composition notebook, black and white. My handwriting filled it. Entry after entry, dated, meticulous. The first entry was from October 14th, 5 months before Maren disappeared. Met M at the records office. She was researching county medical archives for her thesis. She asked me about indexing systems and I talked for 40 minutes. She laughed twice. The second time, she touched my arm. I am in trouble. I need to share some of what I found. Not all of it, but enough so you understand what was taken from me. November 19th. Walked through the botanical garden after dark. Gate was locked. She climbed the fence in her coat and reached back for my hand. I haven't climbed a fence since I was 12. My knee will hurt tomorrow. I don't care. I didn't know I was lonely until she showed me what it feels like not to be. January 5th. She told me about her mother. The car accident, the hospital, the 3 days of silence before they turned off the machines. She cried, and I held her, and she said, "You're the only person who makes me feel like time is moving in the right direction." I could feel her breath against my collarbone. I will remember this. I will not let go of this. February the 22nd. She read me parts of her thesis tonight. She doesn't know I'm the subject. Or maybe she does. I can't tell anymore. Sometimes she looks at me, and I feel like she's seeing someone behind me. Someone she's met before. I sat on my floor, surrounded by evidence of a love affair I had completely, chemically, impossibly forgotten. And I wept. Not because I remembered. Because I didn't. But here's what stopped the tears. The last entry in the journal was dated March 12th, 4 days after Maren Calloway was reported missing. She's safe now. She won't remember either. That's the kindest thing I can do. The handwriting in that final entry was still mine, but the letters were smaller, tighter, written by a hand that was not shaking, by someone who was not grieving, by someone who knew exactly what had happened. The police cleared me as a suspect 2 weeks later. No evidence of foul play, no evidence of violence. Her case went cold. But here's the part that no one explained to me. When they returned my belongings, the things they'd taken from my apartment during the search, there was an item in the evidence bag I hadn't noticed them take. A house key on a plain brass ring. It wasn't mine. I only carry 2 keys, apartment, car. This was a 3rd key and it had been on my keychain. I tried it on my apartment door. It didn't fit. I tried it on my car. It didn't fit. 3 weeks later, I drove back to 1740 Alcott Street on an impulse I still can't explain. The green door was propped open. Gil wasn't around. I walked up to the third floor and stood in front of Unit 4B. The key fit. I had been carrying the key to a missing woman's apartment, on my keychain, every day, without knowing what it opened. I want that to be where this ends. I've tried for 3 years to let it end here. But the thing about gaps is that once you notice one, you start noticing the others. It started small. A Wednesday in June, 5 months after Maren disappeared. I came home from work and found a takeout container in my refrigerator. Thai food, green curry. I don't eat Thai food. I never have. The container was from a restaurant called Suda's on a street I didn't recognize, and the receipt stapled to the bag was time-stamped to my lunch hour. I checked my planner. My lunch hour was blank. I always write down where I eat lunch. Always. 2 weeks later, I found a voicemail on my phone from a number I didn't recognize. A woman's voice, not Maren's, different, younger. She said, "Hey, it's Colette. I had a really wonderful time yesterday. Call me when you get a chance." Her voice was warm, familiar in the way a voice becomes familiar only through repetition, through history. I didn't know anyone named Colette. I didn't call her back. The number disconnected 3 days later. A month after that, I found a photograph tucked into the visor of my car. Me, standing on a rocky beach I'd never been to, with my arm around a woman I'd never seen. She had short black hair and a gap between her front teeth. We were both squinting against the sun, and I was laughing. The version of me in that photograph looked 10 years younger than the version of me holding it. Not literally, emotionally. On the back of the photograph in my handwriting, Naya, Provincetown, August. There was no year. I tried to find Naya. I searched every database I had access to, which as a county archivist was considerable. I found nothing. No social media, no public records matching the description, no missing persons report, but the photograph had a timestamp embedded in the corner. Small, white, almost invisible against the sky. August 2019. 5 years ago. The woman in the photograph looked like she was in her late 20s. She looked happy. She looked like she trusted the person holding the camera. And here is what made me set the photograph down and step away from it. In the photograph, I'm wearing a shirt I still own. A faded green Henley with a small bleach stain on the left cuff. I checked my closet. The shirt was there. The bleach stain was there. I have owned that shirt for years, and I cannot remember a single moment of the day this photograph was taken. I went to the records office that night. After hours, alone. The hum of fluorescent lights and the particular silence of a building full of other people's histories. I searched the county missing persons records, the ones I myself had helped catalog, for any case where an unidentified male was listed as the last known contact. I found 3 women over a span of 9 years. In each case, witnesses described the last person seen with the missing woman as a man in his 30s or 40s, average height, brown hair, quiet, polite. In each case, the man seemed comfortable with the woman, as if they'd known each other well. In each case, the man was never identified, never came forward, never found. The descriptions were general enough to match hundreds of men, but the details were specific. One witness mentioned the man had a habit of tapping his thumb against his index finger when he was listening. I do that. I've always done that. Another witness said the man ordered a pour-over, black, and sat near the window. The third said the man carried a paper planner. I pulled the case files. Elena Voss, social worker, 28, disappeared March 2017. No body, no leads. Ruth Kimura, librarian, 31, disappeared November 2020. No body, no leads. The third was Maren. I spread the files across my desk, the same desk where Maren had apparently walked up to me and asked about indexing systems, and I looked at them side by side. 3 women, 3 disappearances, all within a 10-mile radius, all last seen with a man matching my description, a man who, based on the pattern, would have no memory of any of them, but it was the dates that broke something in me. Elena. March 2017. Ruth, November 2020. Maren, March 2024. 3 years between the first and second. 4 years between the second and third. The intervals were getting longer, as if whatever was happening was slowing down, or as if someone, some version of me, was trying to resist. And then I noticed something in Elena Voss's file that the original investigators had marked as irrelevant. A personal item recovered from her apartment. A slim paperback, dog-eared, left on her nightstand. Pablo Neruda, 20 love poems and a song of despair. I didn't go to the police. I went home and looked in the place I'd been afraid to look. My apartment has a hall closet with a false panel at the back. I've known about it since I moved in. The previous tenant probably used it to hide valuables. I've never used it. I've never had anything worth hiding. The panel was loose. It had been moved recently. I could tell by the dust pattern, clean in 2 arcs where it had been swung aside. Archivist's eyes. Detail work. Behind the panel there was an envelope. Inside the envelope there were 4 photographs. 4 women, each photographed with me, each smiling, each in a place I didn't recognize. On the back of each photograph in my handwriting, a name and a single date. Elena. March 2017. Ruth. November 2020. Maren. March 2024. Colette. September 2024. Colette. The voicemail. Hey, it's Colette. I had a really wonderful time yesterday. September 2024 was 3 months ago. Beneath the photographs, folded once, was a single sheet of paper. My handwriting, my cadence, my particular way of forming capital letters. It said, "You'll read this and won't recognize it. You'll look at these faces and feel nothing. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked. Don't go to the police. They can't help you. They never have. Don't try to find them. You won't. Don't tell June. She already knows too much, and it's safer for her if you stay away. When it happens again, and it will, try to remember one thing. You chose this every time. You just can't remember choosing." I stood in my hallway holding a letter from myself to myself about something I have no memory of choosing, and I understood, for the first time, that I was not the victim of what was happening. I was the mechanism. That was 3 months ago. I've read the letter 40 times. I've stared at the photographs until the faces blurred. I've driven to Latchkey and sat at the counter and waited to feel something, anything, that would crack the surface and let the water through. Nothing. The memories are not suppressed. They are not hiding. They are gone. They were removed with a precision that leaves no scar, no seam, no shadow. Whoever or whatever I become when I'm with them, that version of me is thorough. Last week I found a new entry in my planner. Tuesday, 2 p.m., a name I don't recognize. Coffee with S. My handwriting, my planner, my life. I don't know anyone whose name starts with S. I checked the timestamp. Tuesday was 3 days ago. I looked at my hands and I thought about the man who Maren fell in love with. The man who cooked her soup and walked with her through gardens and wrote about her in a journal with tenderness I cannot access. I thought about whether he's here, right now, underneath me, quiet, waiting. I thought about what he does when he surfaces. I thought about where they go. I thought about the fact that Maren's thesis, the unfinished one, was about a subject who could lose entire people without noticing the absence. And then I thought about the one detail I haven't told you yet, the one I've been circling since I started talking, the detail that keeps me awake. In the voicemail the police found on Maren's phone, the one in my voice, left the morning she disappeared, I said, "I know what's going to happen today. I've known for a while. I need you to understand that whatever they tell you, whatever I tell you later, I won't remember this. I never do." But there was a second part. A part the detectives didn't play for me. A part I only heard because Detective Liang left the file open on a shared system and I still had a records office login with database access. The voicemail continued. Maren, I'm sorry. You're the only one who ever figured out what I am. That's why you have to be the last. That message was in my voice. Those words came from my mouth, and I have no memory of speaking them. I don't know what I am. I don't know what the other version of me does when he surfaces. I don't know where the women go, or if she won't remember either, means they're alive somewhere with holes in their lives the same shape as mine. All I know is that somewhere in my planner, in my handwriting, there's a name I don't recognize. And Tuesday was 3 days ago.